This is one of over 500 assisted PNF stretching demonstrations that can be found as part of my 80 Days to Your Dream Body course, which is available to my channel members. If you'd like to see all of them, then consider becoming a member. But for right now, let's get our stretch on. Okay, so now I just finished up the left limb in supine position. So now I'm going to transition into side lying. The way that I normally perform my treatments is everything in supine, then everything in side lying, then everything in prone. For the purpose of the last video, I just did supine and prone because you wouldn't be able to see anything. But now I'm going to show you the side lying position. So Nick is going to move on to his right side. And as with the supine and prone positions, we want to start proximal to distal and we want to start deep to superficial. So I'm just going to have Nick come a little bit closer to the edge of the table. That way he's a little bit closer to me. What we want to do is take the bottom leg. We want to flex the hip and knee slightly. That way the patient is nice and comfortable on the table. And because we want to focus on the deep fibers of the hip right now, what we want to do is start with the knee in slight extension. So we're just going to go ahead. We don't want too much flexion in that hip. And the first thing that we're going to work on is we are going to get into the hip abductors. For the hip abductors, what we would want to do is we could just go ahead and we could stabilize with either our forearm or our hand. Me personally, I prefer to stabilize with my forearm because I could get a little bit more leverage. And then from here, we're going to take the patient into hip adduction. By taking the hip into adduction, we're stretching those abductors. And right now for this first one, we want the patient's toes pointing straight ahead. By having the toes pointing straight ahead, we're getting more of the central fibers of the gluteus medius, gluteus minimus, and the tensor fasciae lati muscle. And then we're just going to instruct the patient to inhale and lift your leg up to the sky. They're going to inhale, go into hip abduction, and then as they exhale and relax, we're going to traction to create space and take them deeper into hip adduction. Then, if we want to start getting a little bit more into the anterior fibers, we're going to go into slight lateral hip rotation. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go ahead, get a little bit of traction. We're going to sink down, instruct the patient to inhale, press up. They're going to lift their leg into abduction. As they exhale and relax, we're going to go ahead and go into adduction. If we want to get a little bit more, or this position right over here with a little bit of the toes pointing up, now we're starting to get a little bit more into the anterior fibers of the tensor fasciae lati muscle, the gluteus medius and minimus. If we want to get more into the posterior fibers of the gluteus medius, minimus, and the tensor fasciae lati, then we would just go into slight medial rotation of the hip. So we're going to turn those toes inward a little bit. And then we're just going to go ahead, instruct the patient to inhale, bring your leg up to the sky. They're going to inhale, go into hip abduction. As they exhale and relax, we're going to traction to create space, take them deep into hip adduction by sinking down. And then we're just going to back off a little bit. And that is how we would focus on the hip abductors in side lying. Now we are going to work on the hip flexors in side lying. And that was just a tiny taste of what can be found in my members only section. If you enjoyed it, become a member for only $5 a month to get access to hundreds of member only videos.